Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to entitled people, where people believe that they're the only ones that matter in the world, and everybody else, who cares about everybody else. And in this episode, guys, we've got the worst parents ever. I promise you, this episode is insane. So strap yourselves in, grab a drink, and get ready to shake your heads at these ridiculous people. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can send or link your crazy stories to this email right here, and Steve-O might read them. So on this day, I'm in the ER waiting room, and a mom comes in with her deathly ill son that's fast asleep in her arms. I'm wearing a tank top, and I have a Spirited Away themed tattoo piece on my upper arm. I've been here for 2 hours already. I notice the mom keeps looking my way, huffing, dramatic sighs, and giving me dirty looks. I have no interest in engaging, so I continue to ignore her. Finally, the woman stops a nurse, and she says out loud while pointing at me, "Hey, you need to tell that person to cover up that awful offensive tattoo." The nurse gives her a blank stare, and the woman continues and says, "It's scaring my son. He's traumatized." I then look at her son, and the kid is sleeping. The nurse looks at me, and I meet her gaze out of the corner of my eye. She then looks down at the mom and tells her to wait outside or in her car if she has a problem. The woman keeps saying how traumatized her son is, and at this point, she's woken him up now from her yelling. She then tells security that they need to move me or make me cover up my horrific arm, or she's gonna call the cops for indecent exposure. Security tells her to quiet down and take a seat or leave. Final warning. At this point, I'm laughing. So long story short, she did try to call the cops because security wasn't listening to her. There was an officer already in the hospital, and the guy pokes his head in to look at me, and then he walks back out. The cop said something to her, and she leaves screaming bloody murder about indecent exposure in public that's traumatizing her son. So yeah, the post ends right there, guys, but some people are in their own little world, right? Like, I don't like your tattoo. Your tattoo is traumatizing my child, aka me. So I'm gonna call the cops. And for all of you who are wondering what this hideous, horrific tattoo that traumatized her poor son looks like, Opie post a picture. So yeah, I'm pretty sure the only thing traumatizing your son, ma'am, is your screaming. Okay, so today I bring you another emergency room tale. In today's story, a man in his 50s, let's call him Wilbur, is brought in, clearly in pain. The guy's accompanied by his mother named Mildred in her mid-70s. Upon questioning, he tells us that he fell on his butt and he has intense pain that resembles electricity going down his right leg, a clear indication of a herniated disc. So we do an MRI, and sure enough, a disc is compressing his spinal cord. He also has a vertebral fracture, which, while not compromising anything currently, it seems so busted that it appears to be keeping itself together through the magic powers of sweat, sticky tape, bubblegum, and well-intentioned vibes. So of course, it must be treated as soon as possible before it compromises the spinal cord too. By this point, the neurosurgeon is already talking to Wilbur and his mother Mildred, making a convincing case for what he considers the best option, which is surgery. Now, hearing the word surgery, Mildred isn't pleased by such an outrageous and radical solution, which she then claims that we're only suggesting that in order to get richer quick, because in her words, surgery is not the answer to everything. She then looks at Wilbur with furious eyes, more piercing than a fencing foil, and asked him, "What do you think, sweetie? Are you gonna let these abusive monsters rip you open and rip you off like this?" Hearing her ask that, Wilbur, sad and reluctant and defeated, said, well, no, but... That's when Mildred interrupts him, and with a triumphant sneer, she exclaims, "See? We want a second opinion. We won't let you greedy doctors rip us off. We're leaving." Now, we tried to reason with them, but all attempts were futile, and they signed a document that certifies that they leave on their own free will. No medical discharge, and then they left. I felt really sorry for the guy, like he seemed to genuinely want to consider the options we could provide, but for whatever reason, his mother seemed to reign over all aspects of decision-making. Now, Wilbur did come back about 5 days later in an ambulance, now with a much more frantic Mildred, who was issuing instructions left and right, all accompanied by an accusatory finger and flailing limbs, screaming that we did this to her son. Something had put her on a Karen Crimson frenzy, and she was out for blood. So we begin the usual questions, and what we found out was terrifying. Apparently, Mother Mildred took Wilbur to a chiropractor, who then went on to do a cracking job on his spine to fix it. And after an audible crunch, Wilbur could no longer move and feel his legs, which prompted a race back to the emergency room. Unfortunately, the damage to Wilbur's spinal cord was severe at that point, and that meant there was nothing to be done to recover his legs. The poor man was sadly sentenced to a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and he'll never again feel his feet touching grass, sand, or the waves of the sea. Yeah, so reading this post makes me so sad, guys. Like, a 70-year-old mother still reigning control and making decisions for her 50-year-old son. And it's so unfortunate that her personal opinion resulted in her son never walking again. Like, I don't know the situation, guys, and I don't know if Wilbur was under her, full-time care, but whatever it is, it makes me especially sad to know that Wilbur wanted to consider surgery, but Mama Karen was just too convinced that doctors were trying to rob them. This person comments and says, "Why do I feel like she might be glad that this happened to her son? Because, he has to depend on her now." I really hope that's not the case. I really, really don't, but some parents are like that, guys. So I'm a 17-year-old female. I've been living with my dad, 45 years old, and his girlfriend of 2 years, 33 years old, and her daughter, 13, for a couple of months now. My mom's visiting my sick grandfather in Sweden. I've only ever stayed at my dad's on weekends, so it's been hard getting used to living with his girlfriend and her kid full time. The kid is super whiny and pretty spoiled because girlfriend dotes on her, so I usually just stay in my room. Today, girlfriend was taking her daughter on a special outing because she passed a math test, and my dad suggested that I go with them for a girls' day out. I wanted to say no, but I knew he wanted me to get to know his girlfriend and the girlfriend's daughter better, so I agreed. My dad gave his girlfriend $300 to spend during the girls' day. We spent the day going in and out of stores that girlfriend's daughter liked in the mall complex. Girlfriend ends up buying her a ton of clothes, makeup, and other stuff that I don't remember. On the way back home, girlfriend stops at the Starbucks because her daughter wants a drink and some cake pops. Girlfriend orders a drink for her and her daughter and 2 cake pops. I then asked her if I could get something, and she said she ran out of money and she would get me something next time. When they got their order, I asked if I could have one of the cake pops, and girlfriend said that no, it's her daughter's treat for hard work, and it would be wrong for me to take one since I didn't do anything that deserved being rewarded. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty upset. When we got back home, my dad saw their drinks and asked where mine was. I told him that I wasn't allowed to get one because apparently I don't deserve it. Hearing that, his girlfriend gets upset, and she said that I was just twisting her words. And that's when her daughter said that I was being greedy and was just jealous of her. I know I'm not entitled to a drink or a cake pop, but I also don't think it's wrong to be a little bit annoyed. So am I the a-hole? Yeah, so 100% of course not. You're not the a-hole at all. What girlfriend's dad did was a really crappy thing to do. Like, that woman is a monster, in my opinion. And I feel like OP, as the stepdaughter, was entitled to a drink or a cake pop. Like, yeah, it was the girlfriend's daughter's special day, but it sounds to me like the dad intended that $300 to be spent on everybody. And the very least the girlfriend could have done was share a $2 cake pop with OP, right? Okay, so this happened 5 years ago, and I'm glad I can finally share this with your listeners. This happened when I was sitting in a salon waiting to get my hair cut. I was like 23 years old at the time, and I'm 28 now, but I look like a 12-year-old girl. It's a curse. So a woman comes in with her one boy, who I think is around 5 years old. I think. I'm really bad with age. The woman walks up to the counter to let them know that she's here for her appointment. Meanwhile, her 5-year-old was running around the store like it was a public playground. The woman was just standing there talking for a good 5 minutes, while her son just runs around, knocking over shampoo bottles on the display shelves. The kid's laughing and shrieking his head off, and everybody looked annoyed. Now, one relevant thing that I need to mention is that her son was very functional. The kid didn't look like anything was wrong with him. He just looked like a normal toddler who just happened to be misbehaving. The kid even screamed at his mom at one point to turn on Blue's Clues for him to watch on the iPad. So out of nowhere, the kid runs up to me and slaps my leg hard, just giggling like it's so funny, screaming again. I tell the boy, hey, no, not again. You shouldn't do that to people. And that was my mistake. The Karen sees me kind of annoyed at her son, and she saw me saying something to him, and she immediately screams at me and marches right up to me asking, hey, what did you say to my son? Don't talk to my son. I say to her, your son just ran up to me and he... Karen interrupts and says, I don't care what my son did. Don't talk to him. Have you ever heard of stranger danger? To which I say to her, he hit me is what I was trying to say. Karen says, my son is special needs. I can't control him. Are you trying to tell a 5-year-old who has special needs what to do? And are you saying that you're in pain from being hit by a 5-year-old? Like, do I need to call an ambulance for you? Now, I didn't know what to say to that at all. I told her I was sorry and I didn't know he was special needs. And the woman just scolds me for talking to random kids in an aggressive manner, which I wasn't. Karen says to me, just don't do it again. So of course, while waiting, the boy runs up to me again and he slaps my leg a second time. And this time I said out loud, hey, no. I then turned to his mom and said, can you stop him from doing that? Karen says, what did I tell you? I told you don't talk to my son. I don't like it when people try to parent my son. And you're like, what, 15 years old? I tell her, lady, he keeps slapping me and you clearly aren't doing anything about it. Like, should I continue to let him hit me? Karen says, did you not hear me? My son is special needs. If he wants to do something, he'll do it. He can't be controlled. Now, I didn't want to get into an argument with this clearly crazy woman. The woman kept trying to provoke me to become aggressive towards her by saying out loud to her 5-year-old, some people are just so mean, aren't they? Some people have never been taught manners in their lives. I hope she does something again so I can call the police and get her in trouble. She said this while holding him on her leg. I just tuned her out. I pretended to stare at my phone and I was fuming, just waiting for my name to be called. My name was called pretty soon after that, so I escaped a Karen that day, but barely. Like, you really have to wonder how much this woman lets her son get away with due to his special needs. Like, how many times has her son done things he wasn't supposed to do, and she just pulls out the, oh, be quiet, my son can do whatever he wants, he has special needs card. With that said though, like, I'm just gonna point out that OP said she held the boy on her leg after what happened. So what stopped her from walking up to her son, picking him up so he couldn't run around and knock over shampoo bottles or hit people to begin with? And I just want to say that I really hope this woman wasn't lying about her son being special needs, because some parents can be super entitled and do things like that. Like, it reminds me of this one story I read a while back where a mom tried to use her daughter's cancer as a way to get things for free in stores. Like, disgusting behavior, right? So on today's episode of Stupid Neighbors, I need to apparently have my neighbor's approval when I do things that make any sort of noise. My neighbor just rang my doorbell to tell me that his wife said to stop hammering, and I was dumbfounded. I just kind of stared and said, excuse me? And he informs me that we would be unable to make any sort of noise for the next few months because they have a new baby. To which I laughed in his face and closed the door. And now his wife is screaming at my door and he's messaging me to please do what his wife says. So here's some background. My spouse bought this house in 2011. Both houses are single, detached family homes. Neighbor husband was already in his house. I moved in 8 years ago. Shortly after, I saw the neighbor for the first time, and it was someone I've known since I was 4 years old. We went to school together, and now we're 40 years old. 3 years ago, he met someone. She at the time had a 2-year-old girl. She would stay at his house, and I would constantly find their kid wandering the streets. They would just send her outside with no supervision, no toys, no fenced yard, and expect her to entertain herself. A bit about me is I run a daycare, so my yard is full of fun toys. But we also have 3 other fenced-off areas. One for the pool in the summer, one for the dogs, and one for our hot tub. All have separate fences and self-closing gates. Plus, my external fence is 6 feet. During 2020, when COVID hit, the kids were doing virtual schooling from home. The neighbor's daughter never actually did it though. The girl would ring my doorbell in the middle of the day asking me to open my yard for her so she can play. I would explain that she can't be here when I have daycare kids and my daughter will come out to play after supper. She then went back to her backyard, dragged patio furniture to my fence, and climbed into my yard. Who knows how long she was actually in there, but she decided that she was done and she couldn't get out. My gate's latch is at the very top so toddlers can't open it, and she starts screaming and I run out in a panic. I then took her home, explained what happened to mom, and mom gave me crap for not allowing her to play in my yard. I tell her I face a fine if she's caught on my property during daycare hours. I explained this and she still snapped and called me a bitch. And I left it at that. It happened a handful more times, so I start sending them daycare invoices and it still kept happening. I finally told them that I would have to call the police next time, which I did. Except this time, mom and grandpa were both sitting outside on the stairs and they watched her climb onto my side. They also never bothered to come help her open the gate when she started screaming. The police gave them crap and told them to stop or the mom would be charged with child endangerment. I now have proximity sensors at the top of my fence, and I get a notification if anything goes over my fence. Now it has gotten better as she's gotten older, but last summer we set up our above ground pool, and we ordered a new pump system and heater. The pool was half filled. I had also just done up all my planters. I casually glance at my security cameras, and all of a sudden, I see the next door neighbor's daughter by the pool. She took it upon herself to go to the pool and take buckets of soil from my planters and then dump it into the pool. It was $400 damage to my brand new $1,000 pump heater system that was up less than 4 hours. It was at that point I snapped and screamed at her to get out of my yard and to not come back. So now to the current time. As I've said, they had a new baby last week, and me hammering in my basement is disturbing them in their house that's 33 feet away. And they expect me to wait until the fall to finish my project. So I'm currently sitting on my bench outside enjoying a glass of water with my outdoor speakers playing heavy metal music while I mow the lawn, which is much louder than the little bit of hammering. I'll finish that tonight after dark. Yeah, so these are definitely nightmare neighbors and not to mention terrible parents. Like, I am so mad at the fact that they don't give a care in the world and they kept letting their daughter trespass to the neighbor's side. Like, what's it gonna take for those parents to learn? And guys, that part where OP said that girlfriend would let her 2-year-old daughter roam the streets? Guys, tell me that's not normal. Like, 2-year-olds should not be allowed to wander outside alone. Like, there's cars, there's creepy people, there's wild animals. Like, my area has coyotes, guys. So many things could have gone wrong to a 2-year-old due to the parents being very irresponsible. And I just want to clarify that when I say creepy people, I don't want to offend anybody. Like, I don't mean a 90-year-old Mr. Finkel who everybody thinks is creepy, but is in fact a nice misunderstood man. I mean people that see 2-year-olds by themselves and will think, oh, a free baby. Someone that I can keep in a cage in my dark basement because I'm a sicko. Those creepy people. Okay, so with that said, I can't end an Entitled People episode without a wild story for you guys, so here it is. So the only reason why the entitled parent in this story didn't go to prison was because I was 18 at the time, but the fact that this happened to me the way it did still pisses me off. So when I turned 18, I started working at a call center, and I often walked around the city a lot in order to avoid my toxic mother. Anyways, that year, I went from a C cup to a double D cup, and I was getting a lot of looks when in public. And as much as I hate to say it, I was pretty young and naive, so I never thought it was because of the way my body looked, but I preferred to keep my distance from people. One day, I decided that I was gonna go to Walmart so I could pick up some yarn for a crochet project that I was working on. While I was checking out the yarn, I noticed a kid who looked like he was 13 or 14 years old, standing at the end of the aisle just watching me. I immediately grew cautious and started debating if I wanted to get my yarn here or go to the Hobby Lobby across the parking lot. Before I could make a decision, an adult man comes up to him and starts leading the son off. So I started to relax, thinking that I was overreacting. That is, until the dad comes back. The guy comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, but where did you get those implants? They look so real." At that I say, "Excuse me?" I was really embarrassed and shocked, and I was getting creeper vibes from this guy. The man goes on and says, "Your implants?" He then goes and waves his hands in front of my chest and gets really close to me and says, "Where did you get them?" Of course, I was at a loss for words, and I didn't know if he was serious or just being a creep overall. At this moment, the kid comes up and he pokes my right breast, and I instinctively smack the kid's hand away, not caring that he was a kid. At that, the dad immediately gets mad at me and he starts screaming at me to not touch his son. He then says if I don't want attention like this, then I should keep my fun bags put away and covered up. I was at tears at this point and looking around for an escape, especially since the more the dad yells at me, the closer he got to me. He then starts yelling that there was no way my chest was real at all, and that the only way I could prove it was real was to let him touch my chest. At this point, I remembered the fact that I had pepper spray in my bag. So I pulled out the can of pepper spray and told them to both step back and to get away from me. At this point, an employee turns the corner, and he heard us yelling and saw me holding the pepper spray. The employee freaks out, and he calls a manager before coming up to me demanding to know what I was doing. Thanks to me being in tears, the dad was able to butt in and starts lying to the employee that I was seducing his son, and I pulled out my pepper spray when the dad came to his son's rescue. The son immediately starts agreeing with his dad, and the employee was already saying that he was gonna call the police, while the dad demanded that I get kicked out of the store. The manager demands that everyone calm down, and when we had, he turns to me and asked my side of the story. I told him how the dad was being a creep, and he kept commenting on my chest, and even insisted that I need to let them touch, to see if they were real, and how I explained that I was uncomfortable. It's at this point the dad backtracks on the story and tried to defend himself and the kid, saying it was all for educational purposes. This is when I got mad and pointed at the camera at the end of the aisle, reminding them that it would have caught everything. It's at this point the dad and the kid both went silent for a moment before making a break for the exit. Of course, the dad and kid got away, and I never went back to that store by myself. Yeah, it's too bad the guy and his son got away, guys, and I was a bit disappointed that OP didn't empty the can of pepper spray on those two idiots at that very moment. And that, my friends, is r/entitled people, where people think they can do whatever the heck they want, whenever the heck they want. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I hope you didn't shake your heads too hard. And if you guys missed the last episode, I'm gonna link it right here. It's an r/I don't work here lady, where a Karen demands everybody serve her and gets mad when they won't, and uses the excuse that she's a single mom. It's such a funny story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.